So it's a kind of consequence. When you support the destruction of people's rights elsewhere, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to rebound upon you. That the people who are implementing those policies, who are pursuing those policies outside our country will find no real problem in attempting to implement the same policies, to wear down democracy in exactly the same way. One thing to remember, by the way, about the siege of Gaza. One may have, as many human rights exponents who have spoken out on this issue have, one may have strongly negative opinions of the Hamas party. I'm thinking here of Sir Gerald Kaufman, who said in the British Parliament, Hamas is a deeply nasty organization. Or George Galloway, who has been equally critical of Hamas. But both of whom say there was a democratic election, and it was a fair democratic election, and the people voted for that party. They are the ones we should deal with. We should not be engaged in an attempt to terrorize an electorate out of the choice that it has made, or to starve an electorate out of the choice that it has made. So, this is an issue then that, as I said at the beginning, has a bearing upon the suffering of Palestinian people. And it also has a bearing, a very direct bearing, upon our own democracy. What we see in the cynical and vicious treatment of that distinguished public servant, Rémy Beauregard, is one sign of the contempt for proper procedure, for democracy, that we find written all over the actions of our present government. What we see in the antics of the Canadian Parliamentary Coalition to Combat Antisemitism is an attempt to create a moral panic in this country, to create a climate of opinion within which boards of education will tell teachers, no, you may not talk about this or that, in which university students will be disciplined, university professors will be punished, within which journalists will risk losing their jobs if they dare to say certain things. If they dare, for example, to use the forbidden expression Israeli apartheid. Well, as I explained in a section of the book, the last chapter, there was a South African commission of jurists, which in 2009 was asked by the Social Sciences Research Council of South Africa to report on the issue of whether the regime in the occupied Palestinian territories could properly be called an apartheid regime. Now, if anybody knows what apartheid is, it's South Africans. They've endured it. They suffered it. They have the historical memory. This commission of jurists, which included international jurists as well as South Africans, came back with a report saying, yes, it is indeed. Now, how in that light do members of our government, do members of the Liberal Party of Canada, do university presidents dare to say to scholars and activists and researchers, you may not use this term? That's a disgrace. And it's something that, it's the kind of thing that evidence-based, careful scholarship tells us we must not accept, and that our ethical principles tell us we must not stand for. So I want to, in summing up, I want to recapitulate three things. First, we need to take a stand against the possible spread, whether in this country or elsewhere, of real anti-Semitism, in the same way as we should take a stand against the spread of any form of racism, including Islamophobia, including you name it. We should take a firm stand against attempts to spread moral panic, whether it be by someone as distinguished as a former Minister of Justice of this country. We need to look at their arguments and to say, this, I'm sorry, this is not merely spurious, this is disgraceful. We need to be attentive to the evils of our foreign policy. If there were more time, I could talk about other areas in which our foreign policy is evil, Afghanistan and Haiti in particular. where we are also enjoying, by the way, a certain degree of rebound. And we need, above all, to be attentive to attacks on our own democracy. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Keefer. He will be officially thanked after the question and answer period, which begins very shortly. I was hoping that either he or Ed would make the further point that the issue of anti-Semitism in this new form is but one of 5 or 6 different issues which are all being launched at the same time, basically. The issues are the rounding up by the FBI in the United States on this day, this week, and this year of several organizations, activist groups, environmental groups, social activist groups, and other activist groups that wish to criticize the U.S. government about anything. The information is now available from verifiable and multiple sources that these roundups have been occurring, and we think that perhaps, or at least the free intelligence community of the United States thinks, that perhaps these are test balloons, trial balloons, as a prelude to a wider operation. And it's very, very important to pick your issue of choice and to hammer away at it. If you want to go after this neo-anti-Semitism, if we can call it that, then that should be your issue, and we expect you, we hope you will be active in it and not simply sit back and wait for other people to do the work that you should be doing. If you're an environmentalist and you see your fellow environmentalists being rounded up as terrorists because you are confronting the government with something they don't want to hear, then it's your duty to support those people and to work actively in confronting the forces of, what shall I call them, the dark forces of this increasingly dark age. Now, we're going to invite questions from the floor, and I think we'll just do it one person at a time. Yes, ma'am, your name is?
Louise Graham. Just briefly, I was going to add, until you spoke of those activist groups being rounded up, I was going to add the situation is much worse than most of us are aware. So it's it pleases me that you brought that up. I actually don't know where to get more information. I'm sure other people would like to know how they can gather more information concerning that. It's quite recent, I take it, the rounding up of the activists.
Actually, Professor Keefer's invited me to answer that. Simply sign up for the Citizens Inquest distribution list, and you'll be apprised of future events, and you'll have an opportunity to let your voice be heard and to also help us line up other people in this fair city who have similar worries and concerns. Anything specifically for Professor Keefer?
I only want to say my biggest concern right now is that it is our Prime Minister, in fact, that is saying these things, and he has the appearance of sensibility, if you will. He holds the highest office in the land. And so I'm very concerned about people going along with whatever he says. I don't know how many people are out there that feel if he says it, and he holds this office, he is our Prime Minister, then surely he must be correct. These people are sheeples, obviously, per se. And, they would never say, yes, I'm a sheeple, proudly. They would simply say, I honor our president's words. I believe if he says them, then they must be true. Or
perhaps he would like to be our president. I noticed the slip of the tongue there. You said they honor our president's words.
Presidents, prime ministers.
Right.
Sorry, I meant.
Yeah, my quick answer to that would be that we should do our best to inform ourselves. And to look for good sources of information, to read them critically. Mm-hmm. I think that's important. I mentioned David Duke because I think we need to recognize that some of the people who present themselves as human rights advocates are indeed anti-Semites.